Good evening, everybody. My name is Jacob Ehrmann, and Calder Ehrmann was my father. I'm here tonight with my mother, my brother, my wife is here, and we even have some cousins from hot Atlanta here tonight. And on behalf of them and our whole extended family here tonight, I'd like to welcome everyone and really thank you guys for coming out. It's wonderful to see all these faces. You know, my dad really looked forward to these sorts of events every year because he was the first in line to always cheer on someone else who was doing something in this community to make it a better place. So we always looked forward to evenings like tonight. He had a passion for people. And at his service earlier this year, we talked about that, and we tried something there that I'd like to try here as well. In Dad's spirit, I'd ask that everyone stand if able and find someone right around you that you don't already know and try to make an introduction. I think my dad would get a big kick out of that.
Our final award tonight recognizes an individual for outstanding achievement in promoting diversity. It is named for Calder Ehrmann, a steadfast pillar in this community, a fierce friend to all, and a leader among leaders. Now, please help me welcome Juan Johnson, Senior Fellow at the Riley Institute and owner of Juan Johnson Consulting and Facilitation.
Good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to see so many of you out here tonight, especially on this wonderful occasion, and it's made more special tonight because we are honoring my dear friend and your friend Calder Ehrmann. And as was noted earlier today, the program, the Diversity Leaders Initiative, would not be here were it not for Calder, because Calder actually had the vision and the drive to bring people together to make this program happen, to bring together leaders from Michelin, North America, from Furman University, and from the Riley Institute. And it wasn't just the mission, the vision, though, and the passion, or the vision, though, and also the energy that he brought to it, but it was the passion, the fact that he cared about bringing people together to bring healing and to make the state a better place. So it seems very fitting that we have an award that's named after Calder to recognize other people in the community that are demonstrating that same vision and that same drive and that same passion. So I want to start by recognizing our past award recipients. So for all of the past recipients of the Calder Ehrmann Outstanding Individual Award, would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you so much for your service, and that was very much in the spirit of Calder, the spirit of service, making a difference through service. Many of you knew Calder, and you have stories that you could share about how he impacted your life, what a difference that he made, because that was who he was. He always championed other people. He always propped people up, made people feel very valued, that they were bringing some value to this earth. And so I know that many of you have great stories to share. We've asked several people to share their experiences of getting to know Calder, and we'd like to run a short video to hear from them. I want to say thank you to all of the people that participated in that video and for sharing your thoughts about Calder, whom we love very much. I also want to recognize the company that produced that video. They did an outstanding job. The company is Carolina Zoom, and I know that Jane Robelo and I think Mario also are here. So Jane and Mario from Carolina Zoom, would you stand and be recognized? Thank you so much. Fantastic job. Okay, so now it's my pleasure to announce the award recipient for the Calder D. Ehrmann Outstanding Individual Award. Our award recipient tonight for the individual award is Sarita Acker. So Let me tell you a little bit about this outstanding individual. Sarita is the director of the Women in Science and Engineering program at Clemson University and has been instrumental in significantly increasing the number of young women who graduate in engineering and science majors. She oversees a host of programs aimed at developing these young women into leaders in an area of study traditionally populated by men. Through initiatives like her Big Sister Mentoring Program, first-year students are matched with upper-class women in their same major, giving these new students an immediate support and encouragement system. Sarita understands the importance of preparing young students for the future and is actively involved in creating a K-12 pipeline for girls into STEM fields. She created a program called Math, Science, and Engineering. It's a girls' thing, where she travels to elementary and middle schools around the state hosting workshops to show girls that engineering relates to females as well as to males. Through a grant from the Association of University Women, Sarita provides a weekly series of engaging activities designed to encourage disadvantaged students to plan for college and to consider a STEM major. Every summer, Sarita runs Project WISE, an engineering and science camp for middle school girls. Women in engineering and science majors serve as counselors and work with kids on various STEM projects. She has served as a trainer for Clemson's participation in the National Coalition of Building Diversity and as the chair of the committee investigating sexual harassment for the university's Access and Equity Office. Additionally, Sarita strongly advocated for the inclusion of the illiterate members of the custodial staff in Clemson's Staff Development Program, a program that provides professional development opportunities, but whose application requires the employee to be able to read and write. Her powerful advocacy for this disadvantaged group showed the steering committee in charge of the program that they needed to find a way to give these employees a fair chance to compete. Sarita served as an advisory committee member for Project Lead the Way, a program bringing engineering education to upstate high schools. She is a facilitator for the Girls Circle Association and a board member of the Foothills Alliance Rape Crisis Center. Her nominator notes that Sarita's positive attitude and exuberant energy towards diversity have proven to be a source of daily inspiration to students, colleagues, friends, and family. She continues to serve as a role model to minority and female students both on campus and across the state. I'm honored to announce that the 2015 Calder Ehrmann Outstanding Individual Award goes to Sarita Acker, Director of the Women in Science and Engineering Program at Clemson University. Now I'd like to make a special presentation. We are pleased to have the Ehrmann family with us today. And so I'd like to ask Calder's wife, Glenda, and his sons, Calder D. and Jacob's wife, Deborah, to please join us on stage for a special gift. If you cannot make this out, this is a poster that has photographs of Calder over the years giving out the Calder D. Ehrmann Award at this event. And this is a photo collage for the family.
Well, tonight's speaker sponsor is Michelin North America, a large supporter of the Riley Institute, where Calder worked for more than 30 years and served as Chief Diversity Officer. Please welcome Herb Johnson, current Chief Diversity Officer at Michelin and DLI Class 7 graduate, to introduce tonight's special guest speaker. Thank you.
She was walking away with my notes. That would not have been good. Well, good evening to all of you. Our chairman and president, Pete Sullick, is unable to be with us this evening as he's in France for the funeral of our beloved leader, Mr. Francois Michelin. So I'm very honored to be able to substitute for him this evening, because it gives me the opportunity to say to Glenda and to the Ehrmann family that it is really an honor for me to be able to continue to carry out Calder's legacy and his vision for diversity at Michelin North America as the current CDO. So now, to do the task at hand, to introduce our speaker. Bill Barnett was born in Albany, New York. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Dartmouth in 1964 and an MBA from the Amos Tuck School at Dartmouth in 1965. After a 2-year stint as a lieutenant in the U.S. Army's Adjutant General's Corps, he went to work for his father's company, William Barnett and Son. In 1961, Barnett and Son purchased its first southern plant in North Carolina, followed by the South Carolina facility in Spartanburg in 1971. A few years later, the company decided to move its headquarters to Arcadia, and Bill Barnett was elected president of the company. In 2001, Bill became chairman of William Barnett and Sons and has spent the past 14 years focusing on areas close to his heart, his family, and his community. That same year, Bill agreed to be a write-in candidate for mayor of Spartanburg just 5 days before the general election. Who does that? His campaign, with no major speeches and no money spent, earned him a place in a runoff in which he captured 58% of the vote. He was sworn in as mayor in January 2002. According to the Associated Press, he joined Strom Thurmond as the only other person in South Carolina history to have won a write-in campaign. He served as mayor from 2002 until 2009. Barnett's passion focuses on South Carolina and education. He has said that public education represents our incubator of democracy and is vital to competitiveness in a knowledge-based economy. From working for the passage of the Education Accountability Act to chairing the state's Education Oversight Committee, he has played a key role in education improvement in South Carolina. He's also a graduate of DLI Class number 3. It is my distinct pleasure to bring to the podium here Mr. Bill Barnett. Bill?
Wow, good evening. I am delighted and I am honored to be here for so many reasons. my great respect for Calder and his family, Secretary Riley, President Davis, everyone here is important. I want to congratulate Ms. Acker and Denny's. I'm delighted at Denny's Award, and all of the students and other recipients of this recognition. I also want to take a moment to tell you that I'm honored to do this for Calder, and I hope that I can offer a gift of commentary to you tonight with the passion and energy that would be equal to his. Calder Ehrmann was a very special person. And tonight we also got to see another very special person, and that is Juan Johnson. And I think it is appropriate as we celebrate Calder's life and DLI that we recognize Juan's remarkable contribution to our learning and to this great institution. And to Don, Gordon, and Jackie, and Jill, and the entire Riley team, the staff over there in the corner, I say thank you. Thank you from all of us for the gift you have given all of us and for keeping Calder's vision alive. I had a tough start to this evening. I ran into John Miller, the remarkable business leader from Anderson, who asked me how long I was going to speak. And I thought for a moment, and I said, I'm going to speak exactly as long as it took me to get on 85 and 385 here tonight. So you all settle in. I do want to tell you a story that some of my friends from Spartanburg who are here, and I'm honored they are here tonight, might have heard before that I have told. It was told to me early on when I became mayor. I didn't have much of a background in political life. And it was told to me in the context of trying to say that when I'm about to preach or to tell people what I think, that I ought to remember who I am. So here's the story. A preacher went to his church on a Monday morning and discovered a dead mule in the churchyard. He called the police. Since there did not appear to be any foul play, the police referred the preacher to the health department. They said since there was no health threat, that he should call the sanitation department. The sanitation manager said he could not pick up the mule without the written approval of the mayor. Now, the preacher knew that the mayor had a foul temper and didn't really want to deal with him and was not really very eager to call him. The mayor had a bad temper, and generally being hard to deal with, no one wanted to speak to him, but the preacher had to call him anyway, and the mayor did not disappoint him. He immediately began to rant and rave at the pastor and finally said, "Why are you calling me anyway? Isn't it your job to bury the dead?" And the preacher paused for a brief prayer and asked the Lord for some guidance, and he was led to say, "Yes, Mayor, it is my job to bury the dead, but I always like to notify the next of kin." So tonight, as I preach, I want you all to give me a moment's thought as a ex-mayor. I want to tell you another story about a mule. I love mules. I've dealt with a lot of them in my day. Clyde, who was a farmer, decided his injuries from the accident were serious enough to take the trucking company responsible for the accident to court. In court, the trucking company's fancy lawyer was questioning Clyde. "Didn't you say at the scene of the accident that you were fine?" asked the lawyer. And Clyde responded, "Well, I'll tell you what happened. I had just loaded my favorite mule, Bessie, into the," and the lawyer cut him off. He said, "I didn't ask for any details. Just answer the question, please. Did you not say at the scene of the accident that you were fine? And Clyde said, well, I had just got Bessie onto the trailer and I was driving down the road and the lawyer cut in again and said, Judge, I am trying to establish the fact at the scene of the accident that this man told the highway patrolman on the scene that he was fine. Now, several months after the accident, he is trying to sue my client, and I believe he is a fraud. Please tell him to simply answer the question. By this time, the judge was fairly interested in Clyde's answer and said to the lawyer, I'd like to hear what he has to say about his favorite mule, Bessie. And so Clyde thanked the judge and proceeded. Well, as I was saying, I had just loaded Bessie, my favorite mule, into the trailer and was driving her down the highway when this huge semi-trailer truck ran the stop sign and smacked my truck right on the side. I was thrown into one ditch and Bessie was thrown into the other ditch. I was hurting real bad and I didn't want to move. However, I could hear old Bessie moaning and groaning and I knew she was in terrible shape. Shortly after the accident, a highway patrolman came on the scene. He could hear Bessie moaning and groaning, so he went over to her. After he looked at her, he took out his gun and shot her between the eyes. And then the patrolman came across the road with his gun in his hand and looked at me. And he said, "How are you feeling?" Well, I am feeling fine tonight, and I really do hope you are as well. But I am also gravely concerned. News from around the world is just plain sobering and scary. From ISIS to mass killings in Africa, to migrants vanishing in the Mediterranean, to anti-Semitic chants at European soccer games, police actions from Baltimore to Ferguson to North Charleston and far too many other places. A New York Times headline article, 1.5 million black men missing from daily life. The disturbing failure of our elected officials to build and inspire hope for thoughtful and sustainable solutions to a growing list of challenges. I yearn, as do you, for a different world built upon the kind of communication that we celebrate tonight. The DLI model, which is meant to foster understanding, communication, hope, constructive dialogue, not built on fear, but on common understanding. Calder built that model, and we miss him, but we celebrate that remarkable contribution as a platform for our shared community. He taught me, and he taught so many other people here and across this state, what respect will do for our common bonds. Tonight, I do not have to tell you about Calder's personality or his skills or his character. It has been done far better than I could do. So my contribution this evening to this gathering is to try to offer a clarion call to build, but also create an honest communication about our challenges. And I know I am speaking to the choir, but after so many negative events in these last months that you and I have shared together, I think it is appropriate to articulate this feeling one more time. Over the past year or so, our society has been celebrating the anniversary of Martin Luther King's two great speeches and letters. One, "I Have a Dream," and the other, the letters from a Birmingham jail. Yet another unique pronouncement spoken in 1957 in St. Louis, that's 60 years ago almost, offers a slightly different point of departure. He called it then, as we might call it now, a realistic look at the question of progress in the area of race relations. Good then, still good today. He suggested that there were three mindsets people were dealing with in 1957 about race relationships. I'm not going to deal with each one. One was extreme optimism. He rejected that. I think most of us would reject it. Another was extreme pessimism. He rejected that. I think most of us would reject it. But he spoke for a realistic position, which seeks to reconcile the truths of these opposites while avoiding the extremes of both. Dr. King said that night, "We have come a long, long way, but we have a long, long way to go." That was in that speech. So let me try to be a realist. I begin my thoughts this evening on the north side of Spartanburg, South Carolina, something a number of us, many in this room, are trying to work with in building a new vision for our community. And we have been trying for nearly 4 years. We have a long way to go. It is built on a model that Juan Johnson would know in Atlanta called Eastlake, an enormously decayed place that has turned into something really quite special and remarkable as a model for all of us. But I'm not here to lecture on Eastlake or on the north side, and it is a daunting task, except I would like to assert its key premise, and that is that everything we do needs to be built around education. All education vehicles, but particularly public education. Because public education delivers our children the skills for jobs and for opportunities, but it also creates them as citizens. But at Eastlake and in Spartanburg on the north side, and hopefully in many other places, we also build this around a model of environment. The model acknowledges that an environment which surrounds the educational effort is equally essential and important. Not just buildings, nor good teachers. It is about hope, expectations, the breaking up of poverty, homes and families that nurture. It is a realistic and passionate view built on the premise of a safer, healthier environment that surrounds the students, encompasses their lives, allows them to learn and teachers to teach. But it all starts with the critical responsibility you and I have to offer our children from cradle to career educational opportunities. Recently, David Bornstein wrote a blog, which I'd like to just quote a couple of paragraphs. The title of it was "Overcoming Poverty's Damaging to Learning." The bad news is that environments that are filled with stress will impact development in ways that negatively impact growth, specifically important readiness skills for learning. The good news is we can use this same knowledge to design environments to both correct for that negative impact, but more importantly, to set development on a healthy course. The science about adversity and the developing brain is sobering, but it also offers hope. Brains are malleable, and adults can take specific actions to buffer stress for children and help them develop the self-regulatory skills they need in school and in life. This is tough work, made more so by the historic distrust that exists in our communities, in mine and no doubt in yours. There are certain themes that we deal with every day. Fears of gentrification, who gets credit, who is in control, certain bureaucratic reticence to accept change. Whose idea is it? Labels such as Uncle Tom and others, which are applied to people who are trying to work with people that don't look like them to create a better world for everyone. Are we protecting our institutions and the jobs of adults, or do we seek ways to educate and save our kids? To bridge this chasm takes time, patience, leadership, and resources. And it will take institutions like the DLI and like other vehicles that you and I know about to bridge some of the gaps, but these institutions are going to be needed to have steroids. At the DLI, and one must be here in the audience somewhere, I remember, and many of you remember, the beloved Juan Johnson lecture on building a house with both an elephant and a giraffe in mind. But I have concluded that is much too simple a metaphor. What we need requires tough sledding, and without it, I fear there will not be enough fences to protect a growing society or prisons to house our incarcerated. Education properly delivered, surrounded by a nourishing and protective environment. And like Eastlake and its model, or the Harlem Children's Zone and its model, or the North Side and its model, we must strive for a different approach. Dr. King's 57 speech said something else. If we are going to get it, meaning real sustained change, we are going to have to work for it. We are going to have to save our money for it. We need sound and sane leadership. No time for rabble-rousers. Can't solve these problems with misguided emotionalism. Leaders not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. Not in love with money, but in love with justice. We need leaders. We need you. So my message tonight are that our social challenges require less comfort. We send our men and our women to Iraq and Afghanistan to defend our civilization, while so many others of us, you and I, far removed from that risk, are free to enjoy a protected life, but not properly engaged too often in the hard, discomforting work of which I speak. There are, regrettably, too many North Sides in our state, and the only answer is cooperative energy, not preoccupation with college or professional sports or golf weekend dates or gated communities. We know what college coaches make each year. How many of us can tell how much Floyd Merriweather received for his work the other night? We drove here today on roads terribly in need of improvement. Potholes galore. We see the infrastructure failing, and we have no trouble identifying that as a priority. These potholes must be fixed, or our cars become damaged, our speeds are reduced, and our hopes for wholesale investment are lessened. We might debate how to pay for it, but we know it must happen. Yet we drive by too many neighborhoods speedily and are thankful we do not live there. Who amongst us will invest in Baltimore in the next month? Why must our children's future be aligned to their zip code? We cannot turn a blind eye to the education of our children. You and I studied history. Many societies, most that we studied that had failed, did so from within, from internal strife or sloth or getting soft. Why should we assume keeping our enemies out is the only fear we should have? We allow babies to have babies. We encourage or accept birth rates that ignore our growing incapacity to create models to make those children capable of the skills they so badly need. I believe it is time for all of our institutions, all of them, including our churches, to feel less comfortable, to preach about valuing of education and the individual responsibility to contribute. How many gated communities can we build to provide security that we all want? They might examine DLI and ask what Calder would ask today if he were with us. Calder was a builder. He exuded a dream. He worked tirelessly. He'd offered all of us a platform for change and improvement. And I ask you tonight to consider how we're going to use that platform to build on what gift he gave us. We must jump off our comfortable cushions and do what he did and become a builder and expand his message and widen that platform. So each day I ask myself, have I committed myself to both thinking and acting the way I could to change my community as best I can? And are you engaged in closing the educational gap that dooms so many, too many, to a life of failure? Nearly 40% of the men in Baltimore do not read at grade level. Do you know that California uses third grade scores to figure out their needs for jails 15 years from today? David Brooks, in a recent piece on the nature of poverty, said correctly, money is not the answer. What is needed is a shift in the way we think about poverty. Building new neighborhoods or schools or housing is not enough. It is the quality of relationships. That's Calder's message to each of us. The quality of relationships in a home and in a neighborhood and in a community that encourages or discourages responsibility and ambition. The responsibility and ambition we must teach our children. We must make every community contemplate just what place the safety and education of their children must have. Our lives, like our roads, are at risk if we do not do that. So I call tonight for less emotionalism on the right and the left. Just be builders. I don't know how many of you know this, but Roger Milliken, who was a hero to many of us, particularly in Spartanburg and around the upstate, he is buried in Spartanburg, South Carolina. On his grave, it gives his name and the date of his birth and the date of his death. And at the very bottom, there is a small plaque that he wanted placed there. And it has one word, one simple word. And that word is builder. So Roger Milliken must have felt that that was the message he wanted to leave his children and all of us. And I think Calder Ehrmann was a builder. He gave us a template, and I believe it is now up to us to expand that template and do something very special with it. He would expect no less. Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." He didn't say, "I have a plan." I see the dream. You and I need a plan. Thank you all very much.